You've joined the Betamax Video Club. We're winding back to our favourite films of the 1980s. My name is Rich Nelson, and today I've rented Better Off Dead. Joining me is Jonathan Foster from the Prince Charles Cinema Pod Charles podcast. Hi Jonathan, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, Rich? Thanks for having me on.
No, it's my pleasure, and thank you for bringing this copy of Better Off Dead. It was a pain to get hold of. I think I had to buy the DVD off eBay. Now, it's a film that, let's be honest, it's not a massively known film in the UK, and as we'll touch on later, it didn't even get released in the cinema over here. But what's so special about this film for you, and why have you brought your copy?
Well, I found this film when I was probably like 13 or 14 years old, and I think I saw it on TV, so I didn't know it like from a very, very young age. Obviously, I'm a 90s kid anyway, so I wasn't around when this film came out, but you know, I found it a little bit later. I was 13, 14, and it was just the dumbest, funniest thing I'd seen at the time. And it's like one of those things where you think when you're that age that like when you get a little bit older, it's not going to be funny anymore. Like, but I've watched it quite a few times since being an adult, and it still just hits. I don't know. It's just funny. It's young Cusack at his best. I think he hates this film, and that makes it even funnier. And you got like, what's his name, Savage Steve Holland, crazy dude. And there's so many weird cameos in this film. Diane Franklin's great in it. I don't know, it's just Charles DeMar is a legend, snorting snow and jello, and yeah, it's so much to love about this film. I think it's just like this great encapsulation of the 1980s that you don't really see in other films. Like most of the time in the 80s, in these 80s films, they look like the idea I think that people have of the 80s now, where it's very like it can be colorful, the clothing is like kind of ridiculous, the hairstyles are ridiculous. Now you have that in this film, but it for some reason seems a little bit more grounded and real. Like things just seem a little bit more drab, and the clothing is just kind of like, it just seems more realistic. Like no one looks like a supermodel in this film. Everyone kind of looks strange, and I think that's like probably a little bit more realistic about real life. And also it's sort of like this I don't know, fantasy. Like everything about it, it's just like it's a fantasy, and at times when you think things are gonna like be really sweet, and you have a touching moment in the film that just kind of like, you're like, oh, that's nice, and then it just gets bonkers. Like it just goes crazy. So sorry, that was a tangent, but I don't know, I just love this film. It's really funny.
I mean, watching it today, and you know, again, like a lot of the films I've done, you know, this is the first time I've seen it, and I'd heard of it for ages, and again, it was possibly because it was a John Cusack early film, and a lot of people associate early Cusack with Say Anything or 16 Candles or something like that, and everyone, or a lot of people, have seen the meme or the gif online of him with the sunglasses.
Yeah.
You know, and you suddenly get and go, that's where it's from. You know, it's that kind of thing. And as you say, for me, coming back and having watched almost exclusively 80s films for the last 3.5 years, you're sitting here, you know, and you recognise a lot of the, I won't call them tropes, but the way that the script heads. And then, again, possibly because this director is who he is, and there's so many different ways that it spins off. It doesn't go in the ways that you expect, and it cuts to things that almost that I think is owed by a lot of other films that pick it up and take, whether it's directly or indirectly, from this film. That because it's not normal, you know, the stuff. I mean, there's the joke. John Cusack's character Lane is dumped by his girlfriend for the captain of the ski team, and at one point he's driving along, he turns on the car radio, and all these songs that are playing are all songs about breaking up and lost love and that. And that's exactly what they did in The Tall Guy. You know, with Jeff Goldblum, and they do exactly the same thing with that. And it's strange that, you know, these things tend to pop up in other ways. And seeing it now, it is strange, you know, seeing Cusack that young, when a lot of people's experience of him will be, well, I mean, he's been in so many different films, you know, Grosse Point Blank or High Fidelity or anything now that normally goes direct to video. But it's, you know, coming back now, it is surprising when you think about its contemporaries that have been bigger and done more business. And I mean, I'm talking from a UK audience here, you know, I don't remember ever seeing it on TV. You know, it didn't come out in the theatres. So, I mean, for you, from your point of view, coming to it a little bit later, are you surprised that it didn't make it big over here?
I'm kind of surprised it's not just like bigger in general. Like, I don't even think it's like big in America. Like, it's really strange. Like, I think it's one of these weird films. Like you said, you see elements from it in so many things. So that obviously means it's like extremely influential. You know, like you can turn on an episode of South Park. They've parodied this, the whole K-12 thing. You turn on an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They've parodied this. And that's also the weird thing about it, that it is at a time where I think in 84, 85, like you can correct me because this is like your wheelhouse. If you're like, you know, doing this exclusive sort of 80s Betamax sort of vibe, like that is like 84, 85. I always kind of think of the time, especially 85, is the year of the teen comedy. It's the year where I feel like it all started to really kick off. And then like, you know, of course the next year, which I feel like I need to go into a little thing about how this film and Ferris Bueller's Day Off are like sort of weirdly similar, in my opinion. And yeah, so this is I just feel like this is the time where all those films were coming out, and this film is almost like strangely a parody before teen comedy parody films really even existed. It's kind of strange. It like paved the way for so many parodies. Like the whole idea of Lane, you know, saying that he's going to face, you know, the Styles guy, like or Stalin. Was it Stalin? Yeah,
Stalin.
The douchey guy that stole his girlfriend at the K-12. He like, you know, it's like, oh, I'll beat you at the K-12, and then everybody's kind of surrounding and everything, and it's just kind of this moment, and then he's like, fine, I'll see you there. And then the next thing you know, someone on the intercom comes on and it's like, this just in, Lane Myers will face Stalin at the K-12 on Sunday at noon. It's just like, how did that happen? And that's something you see pop up in these films and always parody like an 80s film, but you don't really think of it as like, oh, that's Better Off Dead. You just think, oh, well, they're parodying all these other tropes and stuff. But man, Better Off Dead did it first, strangely.
Yeah, and it's funny when you talk about that scene with the, you know, that where they have their face off down the ski slope at the end, and while I was watching it, I was thinking of that episode of South Park that you mentioned. Was that the one with the timeshare?
Yeah,
and it was, you know, challenging. I mean, and it was about a non-existent thing. You know, I mean, they took it and they made it all South Park, didn't they? But you know, watching this now, and you think this is the archetypal douche, as you described, the jock that the girlfriend leaves him for. I mean, she says at one point, I need to leave you for someone more popular.
Yeah.
And it's the guy, and if you're in any doubt, you know, his name is Stalin. They might as well have called him Hitler.
You don't mind if I take Heather out for some fondue tonight, do you?
Heather? Sorry, Stan. It's just that when it comes to skiing, Tad has all the right moves.
I just might show her my moves tonight, if you know what I mean.
You aren't mad, are you, Stan? I mean, a girl's got to look out for her best interests.
Who are you people?
Still don't want to race me? I told you he was Chicken Heather. Stan Marsh the Darsh.
All right, dude, if I race you, will you leave me alone?
Ooh.
And it is weird how, you know, I mean, when this was made and you look at everything that came after it, and it does seem like they did a lot of things first. And I guess, you know, maybe that's something that it doesn't get the credit for, or people don't look back and think, oh, Better Off Dead did that first. You know, that whole, again, another South Park thing, you know, The Simpsons did it first. But coming back and watching it now, you do think there are so many parts of it that are unique, and it's not just the style of it. And I mean, I was watching it thinking this could have been made by Weird Al Yankovic or something, the way it went off.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just strange that you said, and I read a clip as well about John Cusack hating it at the time.
Yeah.
And then there was an interview with him about, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago where he kind of said it's grown on him a bit. And I wonder if that's the benefit of age.
Yeah.
But
I kind of like, it must have been really early on that I found out that he hated the film. Because for a long time, I used to rate this as like my favorite film. I don't know if it's that anymore, but you know, I rewatched it last night and prepped for this and I watched it like actually, I don't know, probably a year ago or whatever as well. So it's like, it's been kind of recent. And it's still just so good. And I'm like, you know, a lot of the things I do on the Pod Charles Cinecast at times is like try to figure out what my favorite films are. Like it comes up a lot, like every so often I'll be like, oh yeah, what are my favorite films? Because I'm too afraid to definitively say like what my favorite film is. And this film used to be there. And rewatching it, I'm just like, why did I take it out of my top like list? Like it's so good. Like it makes me happy. I know it's stupid. It's like a dumb film, but I think that's what's great about it, because it's not like a film that is stupid and it's trash. It's actually just it's a good, solid teen comedy, but it just like doesn't take itself too seriously, and also it just gets like really strange at times, you know. And I don't know if Cusack, I think the thing I read really early on that he didn't like it kind of made me upset, because I've always liked John Cusack. I know he's had some weird tweets here and there in recent years.
Haven't we all?
So you're kind of like questioning, okay, where's his mindset at? But you know, those older dudes just getting indoctrinated via the internet and stuff, whatever. But you know, he's like always been kind of solid in films and stuff, and this one just I've always loved, and I found out he didn't like it, and I think it comes down a little bit to like Savage Steve Holland's like did this, and then the next film was One Crazy Summer, and they were both just flops. And I think Cusack, maybe he regretted doing the films just because he thought he was missing out on other things. I don't know. You know, if you're in flops, your first two big solo vehicles, you might just get a bit resentful towards those films, you know?
Yeah, and I guess at that time, if you're looking to make it big in movies and your first two where you're the lead don't work, I suppose, you know, and I don't know exactly what else he'd have been up for at the same time. You know, he may well have turned down something for this that, you know, who knows, may have gone on and catapulted him off elsewhere. I mean, you know, he did. I mean, he's done pretty well for himself anyway. Yeah. But I mean, I'd be interested to know where do you see this and Ferris Bueller being sort of, I'd say, twins?
Okay, so I recently, actually, it's coming out this week. I'm not exactly sure when this will be posted, but just watched Ferris Bueller for the Pod Charles Cinecast, and I've seen it 1,000 times, but I knew I was coming on this podcast and we were going to be talking about Better Off Dead, so I had it on the mind, and I'm watching it, and I'm just like, man, this is strange. It's like there's elements to this film that are very similar to Better Off Dead. There's this young guy who like, you know, there's elements with the car, him having this sort of insane sort of like trip around his life of, you know, it's just like, the best way I could put it, he's Bizarro Ferris Langmeyer. This is Bizarro World Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You know, it's like everything that could possibly work for Ferris Bueller, it's like the complete opposite for Langmeyer. Nothing goes right. He can't even kill himself. Like, he wants to kill himself, tries to talk himself out of it. Oh, this is crazy. Because things keep getting worse for him. It's almost like if Cameron from Ferris Bueller's starred in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and which debatably, if you believe in weird fan theories, maybe he did. Maybe Ferris is, but you know, that's another story. You can find out on the Pod Charles Cinecast about that. We talk about that. But the thing I like to think about is like if Cameron was the actual star and you just had this depressed guy going around and having, you know, his life just, it's more focused on him and his life and everything that's going on around him. This is like, that's, you know, Better Off Dead. Better Off Dead came out a year before Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And also John Cusack went out for the role of Ferris and apparently was highly considered amongst all the other top 80 stars like Tom Cruise and Michael J. Fox and Robert Downey Jr. And apparently, yeah, he was very close to getting it. So it's interesting. Like, I just feel like it, like I said, Ferris gets everything he wants and he can do anything. He's like a magician. John Cusack in this film as Lane Meyer, like he's like, oh, he's a typical kid who just like upset about losing a girlfriend or getting broken up with. And then he like, it's just like, oh, this is the end of my world. Oh, this sucks. This is horrible. I don't want to live anymore. And he's just like, I'm going to go hang myself. And then he's sitting there with the rope around his neck. I'm just like, actually, this is crazy. I haven't even seen New York. I haven't been anywhere. And then his mom just comes out, hits him with the door while she's vacuuming and almost kills him. And it's like, these things just keep happening where he's like, that's what makes it so funny to me. It's just really dark humor that's really funny, like where he wants to kill himself, decides, oh, this is crazy, or someone talks him off the ledge and then like inadvertently almost kills him anyway. And it's just really good.
I suppose it's easy, having been a 16, 17-year-old boy, you know probably how that feels when, you break up with a girl. And I think in his case, he'd been going out with her for 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And they break up, and it's suddenly the end of the world. He has photos of her everywhere. That bit's a little bit creepy and weird. And the whole his whole wardrobe with the hangers with the pictures of her on. It's amazing that I assume she doesn't know about that. But it's having been in that position where it does feel like the end of the world. And again, that's something that gets joked about in many things. It happens from the in-betweeners to like forgetting Sarah Marshall when he gets dumped and ends up off in Hawaii and that sort of thing. These tangents all go everywhere. Or the testicles, as the French girl refers to it. And it was nice to see, because I ended up watching quite recently the first Bill and Ted movie. Yeah. And seeing Monique from this, she was one of the princesses there. Again, nice to see a little link. But again, I wondered, having read about the film before I watched it, it did seem, and I was kind of expecting something a little bit darker. That the whole fact that the director and who wrote it and was saying that it was a kind of semi-autobiographical look at his teenage life, the end of his world and these suicide attempts and that. And I mean, there's some, he's obviously talked about him trying to hang himself in the garage. Yeah. He's on the side of the bridge. There's the part where he's in the garage with a car. Yeah. With the fumes going. You kind of think, for a teen comedy, there's a lot of suicide attempts in here that are more than merely, oh, I'm going to kill myself now. He's actually semi in the act of doing it. Yeah. And I wonder if, obviously a bit of darkness is good, but you kind of think the way it was not sold to me, because I wasn't trying to buy it, it was just that you do think this is a film about a teen trying to kill himself. Yeah. And I'm kind of glad it veered away from that halfway through or so. There were these attempts, but it did stay just on the right side of comedy, because otherwise that would have been a much harder watch for an hour and a half.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the sort of magic of it, because I think it's really relatable when, like you said, when you're like 16, 17 years old and you're like, you go through this, it does feel like the end of the world. And you do like, sometimes I don't know if everyone does, but I think most people probably have those thoughts in their minds where their minds go to a dark place. And, but like, you talk yourself down, and that's like what continuously happens here, because it's just like, you're overreacting. It is like slightly a coming of age story as well. Like someone who's like way too deep into something that isn't even that serious, but it seems so real and serious to them at the time. And that's like the epitome of being a teenager. And then, you grow out of it and you see that there's other things out there, and that there are other special relationships that you can build from people who actually do appreciate you and stuff. And it's funny, like the crush that Lane seems to have on his girlfriend, like, how hard he seems to like love her or whatever, that infatuation that he has. It's just like almost the way you would see a girl in these films like, you know, a typical 80s 90s comedy have on her boyfriend, the guy who's usually the guy who cheats on her, blah blah blah. So it was kind of like fun to see it flipped, you know, a little bit, like where he's the one with the hard crush, and it's just like funny to see the girl just to, like, drop him. And there's a lot of like dumb tropes and stereotypes that this film touches, but they do it in a really like kind of funny, unique way that's just like, you know, just different, and it's kind of funny.
And I mean, even little things that you don't see, or maybe it's just I'm not looking in the right place. In sort of UK comedies, there's a lot that you kind of imagine from teen US films about set in the cafeteria. And there's a couple of set pieces here. You know, there's the scene where Lane is going to ask out the girl who's dating the basketball team, and just little points where it's, you know, oh, she's not dating one of the basketball teams, she's dating all 5 of them. You know, little things like that where you think that's, you know, it's an interesting idea, and the whole farce where he gets the roller skates and pulls her dress down, and you feel that, you know, in a different film that would be an iconic scene. You know, that would be one of those things you look back at, oh, 80s comedies, oh, the bit in Better Off Dead where he pulls her dress down, you know, in the cafeteria. And you know, things like that where you see that stuff, and maybe it's just something that had the film, you know, done something differently, or, you know, I mean, we joked about it off air when talking about podcasts. Had it been marketed differently, or had the PR team been thought of something a little bit differently or creatively, you know, would it have hit a bigger audience and snowballed from there? But yeah, it's a shame because, you know, watching it now, you can see so many parts of it that have been built on by other films.
Yeah,
and it is a shame that, I mean, I don't know how many people will have seen this, and again, when I kind of equate it to that Real Genius movie that I hadn't seen up until whenever I did the episode for it last year, and when I talked to Jenny about it on the episode, you know, she remembers it so fondly, she loved it, and yet I'd never seen it. And judging by the download figures for that episode, not a lot of people have seen that either. But
I apologize, you know, Rich. I've ruined you with this film that no one's ever seen.
No, but this is the thing. This is, you know, this is something that, you know, it's amazing that, you know, it just seems, watching it should tick those boxes.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, and again, this is a story of anything, you know, it could be someone pressed the wrong button or phoned the wrong person, but it's just, I'm surprised that this film didn't make it bigger.
Yeah, it had a lot of stars in it. It's really strange, like, at least at the time. You know, you have, obviously, John Cusack. I mean, he's building his career. This is early, so he's not quite the name yet. But you would think, you know, years down the road, a couple, you know, like, you know, maybe find a life in video or whatever. But this still feels like really cult. You know, like, I don't see a lot of people ever talking about this film. But you would think that, like, you know, maybe VHS, Betamax, DVD, whatever you want to talk about, like, that this would find this weird little life, and it would have a little bit more notoriety. Because John Cusack, you've got Kim Darby, the mother, like, she was in True Grit, the OG True Grit with John Wayne, as a little girl, Maddie Ross. You've got let's see, Charles DeMar, played by Curtis Armstrong, aka Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. Like, how is he not a bigger star, like, amongst people's minds? Like, he was in so many 80s comedies and stuff, and he's like, Booger is such a classic character, and he's really classic in this film. You've got Amanda Weiss, who plays the girlfriend, the original girlfriend, and, you know, she was in, like, A Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, is the blonde haired girl that I think sort of is maybe one of the first deaths in the film, like the best friends of Heather Langenkamp. You've got, let's see, another, like, weird, there's a couple of weird cameos. You've got, let's see, Porky, you know, like, I don't know what his name is in this film, but he's like the guy who runs the burger joint that Lane has to go work at.
Oh, yeah, Rocco.
Yeah, so he's like, he's Porky in the Porky's films. He's, you know, like, kind of a big character. I feel like this film takes a lot of nods from things like Porky's, or at least from, let's see, A Christmas Story. it's got that sort of vibe. Like, I think Savage Steve Holland must have been probably like a bit influenced by Bob Clark, who did those films. Because it feels like that, the vibe. He's just like getting this weird sort of thing, but it's just all on acid or something, like, and yeah. And then you also have, weirdly, E.G. Daily, Elizabeth Daily, like singing at the New Year's dance or whatever they have in this film, like singing the title song, which is actually, I feel like, a banger. There's a lot of good music in this film. Better Off Dead. Yeah, like, she's the voice of probably many people around my age's childhood. And also she was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure as Dottie, and she's like Tommy Pickles as in Rugrats. Like, if anyone out there listening is more of a 90s kid, I mean, like, there's a lot of people in this film, and you just think, like, man, people like should know it. I don't know. I don't get it.
I mean, I love there was a, when I was having a flick through IMDb around some of the trivia and some of the cast of this, and one thing that sort of immediately made me wonder if this is why you picked it was the guy who played Ricky, the
yes,
fat kid neighbor. He was one of the writers of Good Burger.
Yeah.
And it was like, I know that's a film you like, and it was just strange that these kind of guys have gone off to do all these weird things, but. Something I know, having done a number of episodes and links to James Bond films, and you've got Vincent Schiavelli in here as well, who was he was an assassin in Tomorrow Never Dies. But this is the thing that Bond fans, I've noticed, tend to do, is they'll go off and watch anything if someone from a Bond film is in it. And
yeah,
I know he's in Ghost as well, but his little cameo in here as the teacher was really amusing. He's this kind of weird looking but insanely charismatic teacher, and I just love that that whole visual gag where Lane is writing on the chalkboard, it makes the screeching sound and everyone's hair is standing up on end. I mean, that was really well done.
Again, that's where I come in back to Ferris Bueller's. Just think about like in its bizarre world. In Ferris Bueller, you had like Ben Stein and oh God, I can't remember his name. The other guy that was the teacher that I think was just like some classic sort of acting coach or something. But anyway, you had those two teachers and all the kids look incredibly bored. Whereas in this film, you have Vincent Schiavelli going like, talking about geometry and like saying God knows what. Like, it's just, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even matter. But everyone's just like on the edge of their seat, so excited. And it's the funniest thing because it's like the complete opposite. Ferris Bueller, like all the kids, you see them in their faces, just like jaws are dropped, just sort of like so bored, and just like you flip it in this film. And like Lane is the only normal one. Lane is like the one who's just like the normal kid who's just looking around, just like why is everybody so prepared? Why, like, people are pulling out like a Filodex and like printers, and like it's such a good scene, and like they're just so excited, and then like they want to get picked to go to do the problem on the chalkboard. It's like really funny. They're like really amped up. Like no one ever feels that way in school, and that's like what makes it really bizarre and fun.
Just found it brilliant. And then the first, I think this was the first of a recurring set of gags where he asks Lane for permission to go out with Beth.
yeah.
And I think it comes up about three or four times throughout the film, and it's just
the
so
postman.
I mean, it's brilliant because we've got the teacher who, because Lane hasn't done well in the class, you kind of think, this is awkward. Is he going to have a word with him about failing grades or something? And having just watched Bill and Ted, that's kind of where I think I'm going. And all of a sudden, he's asking to go out with the girlfriend. And
Mr. Meyer, would you stay behind? I'd like a word with you.
We'll do this. Talk to you later.
Lane?
Yes, sir.
This is a bit awkward.
Yes, sir.
Well, I've heard a few things, and, well, I was wondering if you would mind if I took out Beth?
That's what I mean. It's like you think it's going to be like this this normal like trope, you know, that you see in these films. This normal trope you see in a teen comedy, but then it just like completely 180s on you, and you're just like, whoa, like, you know, Lane just like he gets really paranoid in this film as well, which is like gets really really funny. Like, you know, you got the postman asking if he can take take Beth out. You've got like Lane. I mean, I guess we need to talk about the paperboy, because that is like the most iconic thing in this film. But, you know, Lane just getting chased and stuff by them, and then you got like, you know, his dad just trying to like reach out to him like as a typical father, and just like having this book of all these phrases of how to talk to like a modern teen, and he's just getting everything wrong, and it's really fun. And then he's like looking at a book about drugs and stuff, and like underlines paranoia. Lane looks at a TV at one point, and Barney Rubble from the Flintstones ask him, he's like, I know this must be weird because I'm a cartoon and all, but do you mind if I take Beth out? It's so good.
And I mean that part with the paper boy,
yeah,
and it is, you know, something that comes along where he's constantly harassing Lane for $2, and this is, you know, a weird slapstick thing that goes throughout, where everywhere Lane goes, this kid's there, you know, whether he's up the slopes or I think he's after the dance at the school, where all of a sudden he's walking through the grounds of the school, and there's a dozen kids on bikes delivering papers asking for $2. It's I mean, it's a weird little aside, and it's one of those things that, again, it's funny in a lot of ways because it is just constant harassing for something minor, but it shows the dedication. You assume paper boys don't care, but
yeah,
you know, clearly they do. I mean, I just found it weird, and unfortunately I went down a bit of an IMDb rabbit hole where I searched for the paper boy, and it turned out he had been in what I didn't realise was a set of sequels to Midnight Run.
Oh, really?
Which I didn't know existed.
Oh, wow.
And it
really
bummed me out finding that they existed. But no, it was great. And I mean, the fact that even the kid was there at the final showdown.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
They're going down this super dangerous slope, and he's there on a bike with skis on.
Yeah. $2.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how that's the sort of thing that can easily come across, you know, can easily be overdone.
Yeah.
And he does pop up a few times, but he doesn't dominate too much.
Yeah, definitely. It's always
get the balance right.
It just always like kind of accentuates the scene, really. Like, you know, would you just, that's what I mean. Like Lane has a nice moment. Like, he might win something. You know, he might like feel good about himself, or the opposite. He might like feel really bad, and, you know, get to a dark moment, and then out comes this stupid paper boy, and it just like gets worse for him, and it just goes absurd. I love how like just full throttle sometimes this film goes. It's just like, why not just throw the paper boy in there, like have him just appear on top of Lane's car and cause him to wreck. Like, it's just like insane, just utter insanity. I did read something really strange about the ending of the film. So you have the big K-12 show off between Lane and Stalin, and originally they wanted to go the Rocky route where they tie, and audiences kind of poo-pooed it, and I think the studio poo-pooed it, and they were just like, oh no, like we can't have a tie, no one wants to see a tie. And they decided to have it so that Lane wins, but the only reason why he wins is they added in the paperboy chasing him, which it's like trying to kill Lane basically, and it just like caused Lane to, you know, end up winning by happenstance. So yeah, it's so good, it's such a good like ending bit, and that's not the last you see him either, because like you almost think they killed the paperboy, which is great, because at one point he just goes flying off the cliff screaming $2.
That was like something out of Indiana Jones, isn't it?
Yeah. But at the very end, you have Lane at the Dodgers stadium with Monique playing his saxophone, sitting on the car that she helped him rebuild. And it's just like this kind of sweet, typical like 80s romantic teen comedy ending that is just kind of silly. And then as the credits are about to start, the little like the paper boy just starts coming into frame. It's just like yes, here we go.
This is totally set up for a sequel. I was wondering because you kind of see, and it's easy to look at someone's career. I mean, from 1985 onwards, and you see a couple of parallels between what John Cusack did. Say High Fidelity, for example, where the main crux of that, based on the book, was that he split up with his girlfriend and he has flashbacks and what did I do wrong and all this sort of thing. I mean, he didn't go as far as trying to kill himself. But then there was also Hot Tub Time Machine, which weirdly or deliberately or whatever showed John Cusack from that era, the mid-80s. And again, they did overdo the 80s nostalgia thing, but it was set around a ski resort and this ultimate douchebag, main sort of stereotypical character, and you kind of think, is that where that went? And was this a prequel to that? It was weird seeing, I mean, looking for things that aren't there, but knowing that that's how it goes. And I guess it's easy to kind of think, oh, maybe John Cusack's stunt double can ski, but even though he was wearing, I think, welding goggles by the looks of it.
Yeah, there's a lot with the skiing and like the weird costumes that John Cusack wears in this film, like when he's racing as well, and but yeah, I mean, that's interesting to think, like if John Cusack is like, in his later years, like you said, maybe he's come around to this film a little bit, and yeah, like just your own headcanon, your own your own theories. Could you tie these films together? To John Cusack, just like, I mean, come on, it's like he has to admit that he likes this film now. Come on, it's like it's a classic. It's a classic. It should be a classic. I know it's not a classic because it's like I said, for like 30 minutes now, no one knows it. So, but yeah, I like your theory there that maybe Hot Tub Time Machine or whatever is a weird sort of like sequel to this.
It's certainly better than the sequel to Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah.
Well, I've got. I need to find the original quote, but according to the blurb I've seen, it said, despite his initial hatred of the film and of director Savage Steve Holland, John Cusack admitted in 2013 he does not hate the film or making it. He wishes some things in it were better. Okay. He said he feels that way about every film he's made, and he's happy it achieved cult status.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, it's like, I think with time, you move away from stuff, and you just start to like, just appreciate where you've come from and stuff. Anyway, I mean, maybe that's just what it is. Yeah, I mean, it seemed kind of like he had a bit of a falling out with Savage Steve Holland. I think like One Crazy Summer, that was like where it really started, because he'd already had like disappointment with Better Off Dead not doing well, and then One Crazy Summer. I mean, I've seen that film before, but like I think it's not really good, and he struggled, I think, when they were making it, and wasn't really seeing eye to eye with Savage Steve Holland. So. But, is what it is, I guess. Time can heal all wounds.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a film, I haven't seen that either. And then when you look at, there's a lot of ingredients in there which should tick a lot of boxes. I mean, it's John Cusack and Demi Moore. Mm-hmm. Bobcat Goldthwait's in it.
Yeah.
I mean, that immediately for me should ring it. I mean, it's got a really weird poster. It's also got the guy who played Sloth from the Goonies.
Oh, yeah. So I've seen it before. I just forget it, man. Like, I think I've only seen it once. And it was, like, early on, like, when I first found Better Off Dead. And I was like, oh, same director, John Cusack. Should be fun. And it must not have really hit a note. And
one other thing I did make a note of that I enjoyed from the film and was fairly well done was this sort of recurring, and I think it comes up about 3 times, the race between Lane and the two Asian guys. And the initial one where they pull up alongside each other, it was where, and you wonder if that influenced, was it Back to the Future 3, where they have the race and Marty reverses, although he does it deliberately.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in this case, he reverses into his future boss. But I love the way, and it's been parodied a couple of times, or parodied or done differently, where the passenger in the car, and apparently he learned English from watching sort of
It's like World of
channels.
Sport or something.
Yeah. And he narrates everything in that
Yeah.
style. And I remember there was a show on Channel 4 in the 80s where it was I can't remember what it's called, where a teenage guy had his inner monologue voiced by a cricket commentator, and everything was done in the style of a cricket game. And I think that was quite recently, maybe 10 years ago or so. There was a show again on Channel 4 where Rafe Spall, he had like a Sky Sports news crew sort of commentating on his life as he's going through and making all these decisions. And watching these two guys, you know, this guy's narrating a sort of in the style of a, I don't know, IndyCar, NASCAR sort of race. And it's just amusing that it's done. It's not overdone. You know, it's done a couple of times, but only takes up a short period.
Yeah.
It's different. It's a little bit unique, and the way they've done it, you know, yes, they're Asian guys, and the joke is that the way he's learned English, but it's not done in a way that's insensitive or hasn't aged badly at all.
6 months. 6 months, and she just dumps me for him. For Stalin, just like that. 6 months.
Truly a sight to behold. The man beat the once great champ, now a study in muppishness. No longer the victory-hungry stallion we've raced so many times before.
That's what I was just going to say. I feel like it very easily could go down that line of being maybe slightly racist, but it wasn't. It's not. It's very funny too. It's just like, it's a good voice, and that guy shows up quite a bit. He's been in a lot of things. Like, he was in The Game with Michael Douglas. He was in Johnny Tsunami. If any 90s Disney Channel original movie fans, he was the dad in that. So like, I like that guy, and it's always fun to like go back and see this and be like, oh yeah, this dude. Oh yeah, he was in Karate Kid 3. Or,
oh yeah, cool.
Or is it 2? Which one is the one where he goes to Japan?
2.
Yeah, 2. It's 2. Yeah. So he's like sort of the baddie bully guy in Karate Kid 2. So yeah, he's great, and this whole thing is really fun. The voice is great, like that talking like Lane Meyer, you know. It's just like, it's a really great thing, like a funny thing that happens, and like you said, it doesn't happen too much, and when it does happen, again, like the Paperboy, it's just that sort of, I mean, the gag like of him, you know, he's gonna race it first, and you know, he's in his beat down station wagon, and he like accelerates and he runs into the Porky guy, the guy from the pig joint. Everybody wants some. And then later, after he has like sort of a setback, he runs into the same guys again, because this is what you do in a small town. This is such a small town film. I feel like it hits the notes of Suburbia more than Ferris Bueller as well, like, or other teen comedies like this, where it just feels so much more realistic, even though it's wacky, because this is what people actually do. Like, no one goes off in Suburbia and has like magical adventures and sees the entire world. Like, it's a lot more boring than that. And that's what this film is. You get like these guys like keep appearing, and you're just like street racing, and you know, he comes back, and it's the great gag of him, you know, like already having a setback. He's already ran into someone earlier in the day, and then he's like reversing because he like went past the line, and he forgets to like, you know, put his car back and drive, and he like hits the same guy. It's great. It's just a really good gag.
I mean, the pig burger joint, it's an amusing kind of thing, especially looking back at it now.
Yeah.
You know, and even in 1985, you know, there were jokes about the hygiene levels. You know, he's stubbing his cigar out in the meat, and
yeah,
putting his false teeth in the Coke, and you know, when he says, if you want to wash your hands, do it on your own time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm not overly fussed about that, but I know a few people who look at that and wince at the thought of, oh, salmonella, whatever.
Yeah.
And again, you know, that's where it goes off in weird tangents, where we've got the kind of the animated burgers, you know, like something out of the California Raisins.
Yeah, I love that scene. It's 100% sort of California Raisins. And the amazing, it's amazing. I think it's really well done stop motion animation. And a funny scene. It's a very like Frankenstein, like Lane building this, like, because he's always in his own mind, building this sort of like monster Frankenstein like burger, and it just turns into like a music video for like a stop motion burger music video for Van Halen, and it's amazing. So
it works again, you know. It's eccentric enough, but not overdoes it. You know, it's not one of these films that just is 90 minutes of what the hell is that.
Yeah,
you know, it's just again, it's like a little dream sequence where he's off making this burger and shouting "It's alive," and you can tell his hair's a little bit crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think this was so close to the line of being that's a little bit too much.
Yeah,
and you think when you look back in hindsight and you think it's skated very close to being oh come on, like, you know, but I think anyway, you know, it's kept just on that right side for me of being, you know, it is a dream, or it is a flashback, or it is that kind of fantasy world.
Yeah,
you know, you've got a teenage boy living in his head, but we're not camped out there exclusively, thankfully.
Yeah, weird. Definitely. Yeah, it's I mean, I can also see if someone like would say that this did cross that line for him, you know, like where they think it's a little too silly. But like I said earlier, I think it really does do a good job of being a parody where it's not too stupid. Like, because I'm not a fan. I used to be, you know, I used to like laugh at some things that are just like 100% just completely dumb. And like, you know, when you go back to watch them when you're an adult, they just don't hit the same. You know, it's just like, all right, that's really not that funny. But you know, I think this one does it really well, where it's just like it's absurd at times, but it's still a good teen comedy that's got some heart to it and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's just good, solid. There's a lot of good jokes in it as well, like just like things that just keep popping up. Like, I mean, Charles DeMar, I think, is a really underrated character in 80s comedy. Like, he's a funny, like everyone probably knew a guy like that if you grew up in a small town, like someone who thinks they're doing like extreme stuff, like trying to get high all the time, but they don't, like, they're in this small little, you know, town that like there's no drugs, no one knows anyone to get drugs from, so you're just like doing stupid stuff, you know, where you think you're getting high. So he's like snorting snow, he's snorting like jello, he's, you know, just talking about this the street value of the mountain, because it's just pure, this is pure snow, Lane. You know, it's great, he's a great character. And like the scene where, you know, he's just sitting there talking to Lane at the dance, and Stalin comes with his stupid buddies and Beth, and he's just like, oh, you should maybe, you know, shave a little closer next time. And like he just starts laughing so hard, and it's just like he laughs so hard that like the bully just walks away. And I think that's almost like a good example of how you should handle bullying. You know, if you got a problem with someone, just like laugh it off, you know, like to an extreme amount that they just get pissed off and walk away, you know, and then come back and tap them on the shoulder and keep laughing about it.
And even for that, you know, that was a dig at probably the fact that they cast 20-something actors in high school films.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I love that as I mean, that's a whole, you could do a whole podcast on that. Just, you know, all the stupid films that had kids that are way too old looking to be in those movies.
Yeah. Oh God, there's a tapestry.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. I mean, speaking of, you know, this as a cult film, and a lot of my listeners hopefully will know you from the Pod Charles podcast, and and I've mentioned on several episodes about how I've seen, you know, some of the films I've done for this at the Prince Charles Cinema.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you said, you know, you're not even sure if you'd be able to get a copy of this to show. But I mean, in an alternate universe, I mean, would this be the sort of thing that you'd like to show as almost a curiosity, as something that, you know, as a lesser known film that might develop a new audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me particularly, I'd have to, like, you know, probably twist Paul's arm a little bit, maybe convince him on it. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, Say Anything tends to get a good little crowd, you know, so people like early Cusack. I mean, that's a classic. And I think it just takes a little bit of clever marketing, you know, like if you could find a couple of people that know it, just get them to come out and maybe bring someone. And, you know, that whole like, hey, if you love this film, tell other people about it. Just share it, like share your love for it, we'll retweet it, and like whatever, I don't know. But it would be interesting to see if you could get a little audience out for it. I always like that at the cinema where we like try to show something that you don't really know if it will do really well, and you just give it a go, and then it turns out that it has this nice little spark to it, and people come out and you're just like, oh well, maybe we can do this again sometime, and people like build a little bit more of a niche cult audience for it. Maybe this has that power. I don't know. I really don't know.
I mean, it's strange, having been, I've been going to the cinema on and off for 15 years or so, and it's got, some of the films I've seen there, and yes, I've seen Die Hard there and Lethal Weapon and Predator, but I've also seen Morons from Outer Space there. It is that kind of, it's almost like if you're going to see it anywhere, it'll be there. And I know there's the chalkboard by the bar where people put suggestions on, and some of the ones you see on there, there are the normal ones, there are the ones that are slightly more, that you wouldn't get your Local-Odeon. I mean, I think I put Superman 4 on there once, but it's it's one of those things where it is strange how sometimes it just needs that kind of little nudge from someone to get people to go, because I'm sure there are enough people within travelling distance of London who have seen this film, who enjoy this film, who love this film, who would love to see it on a big screen, and then just getting hold of it, because I mean, let's be honest, it's not even available on streaming in the UK at the moment. So you kind of think, if you're going to see it, if obviously if circumstances allowed, what better opportunity would you get than to see it on a big screen?
Yeah, definitely. I think what would really help is like if a company decided to re-release it properly or something. I mean, I don't know what it would take, because I don't see a company wanting to do that. Like, just you'd almost need someone in this film to kind of become some sort of like cult hero to like, you know what I mean? Like, do something out in the world that like gets people talking. John Cusack, maybe he needs to like step up his game. I don't know. Do something, Cusack. I don't know. But yeah, if you had like someone like Arrow or something like that re-release it, it feels a bit weird enough to be an Arrow. I mean, it might maybe it's a little not weird enough. I don't know. It's a strange one. It's a good dark comedy, but if you had someone like that re-release it or whatever, then you get a little bit of hype around it or something, and it makes it a little bit easier for us to like, play a film like that. But yeah, I mean, it'd be really interesting. I'd like to see someday. I mean, maybe I should look it up. Because I was joking with you a little bit earlier before we started recording that like I get asked sometimes by Paul, who's a programmer at the cinema, to like if I have any ideas or anything, because I share an office with him, or at least I did for a while, but yeah, I share an office with him, and he's like, he'll ask me like, do you got any ideas? I'm booking a bunch of films. You got anything you want to see? And I always draw a blank, and like this is one that and now I'm like, oh yeah, love to do that, love to see it. Like it was like that with Good Burger. I think I talked about it for a while, and then we started the podcast, and then he said, oh, there's a 35 millimeter print available. And that's sort of the thing that happens sometimes. There'd be like these it was like a show print. Like it was like, basically from maybe when they had the premiere here in the UK, and it had barely been played, and it was beautiful. And like, not that many people came out, and it's like Good Burger. It's like a classic from 90s kids perspectives. And it's like, you like hope that a lot of people would be psyched for that, and it just didn't happen. It's sort of the thing that can happen sometimes at the cinema. You'd have these things, you just never know. You never know. Some people might come out, and some people just like get hyped for it and then just don't turn up.
Yeah, it's the perils of having to leave. And I guess a lot of people have now, over the last year, have worn nice grooves into their sofa where they're scared to leave and everything. Why not when you can watch The Crown again on Netflix? But sometimes you've got to take that risk.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it's been really nice in the last year when we've been open. 4 weeks out of 4 weeks since March 2020, because we reopened and had to close, and reopened and had to close. But in those times of being open, the times we were allowed to trade and we were open, we had a lot of people coming out to see the old films, and we showed a lot of exclusively old films because there wasn't a lot of new films to show. So we just like, did what we do best, get the best of the best, try to welcome people back. And even though some of those films were being shown at your Odeons or Views or whatever, yeah, people still came, and it was really nice to see. So if you're a listener out there on this podcast, that loves the Prince Charles Cinema, and you came out when times are bleak in the last few months and stuff, and I really want to just say we all appreciate it, because it was really nice to see, and it's good to see there's like hope for cinema.
Absolutely. And I mean, I went in October and saw Lost in Translation, and picked up my lifetime membership after buying several annual ones, and could have saved a lot of money over the course of that time. But it was like, and it was weird seeing before that film, which again is one that, I mean, it was a day I was able to go, and it was that, and I thought I wanted to see that film. And you saw the trailers beforehand, and I think there was one that was by, and I can't remember the name of the movie, by the guy who directed Parasite. There was a trailer for one of his films, and there was also a trailer for The Empire Strikes Back, because it was the 40th anniversary, and it was just kind of like, eclectic collection of movies that's just like, again, weirdly at the time, I think my local Odeon was going through one of those let's show old films, and they had Empire Strikes Back and weirdly The Princess Bride as well. So, but it's just, there is obviously an audience for it. So, and again, there are people I know listen to this who I've met at the Prince Charles when we've been to see Morons from Outer Space and License to Kill, when did that a couple of years ago. There is that audience there, and I think it's just be really nice to go. I mean, even just the novelty of going to sit in a cinema again with humans, that'd be nice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. There's nothing like it. It's like, I'm not gonna crap on like watching films at home. I love doing that, and sometimes I don't like going to the cinema, which is weird. Like, and that's because sometimes people at cinemas, that's what I love about the Prince Charles Cinema. Like, there's, I think people know the drill when they go there. Yeah, occasionally you're gonna get some people who like do some things that annoy you, but we do have ushers, and that's what's awesome about the Prince Charles Cinema. There's people in the screen that kind of like help patrol and make sure that everyone's having a good viewing experience. And that can be a downside to cinema sometimes, is like if you go to one of the big chains, they don't have anyone on the screens, or no one even checks the screens. There's like people talking, and it's just like a culture of like, people just kind of not being really respectful of the cinema, and just kind of like, why don't you just like wait a week? This is going to be on home stream, and you can just sit at home with your friends and talk during the entire film. But it is what it is. That happens. But at the same time, there is nothing like seeing a film on the big screen sometimes, like especially like just big films. Like, small films are great too. Like I would love to see something like Better Off Dead that's just a smaller type film on the big screen. But just like big grand films, like just epics, or just action packed films, or whatever it is, like it's nothing like it. And big screen, the big sound, dark room, other people around, sometimes the audience is the best part about seeing a film. Like when we did Uncut Gems, like surprisingly in 2020, that feels like it was like 10 years ago now. But yeah, like that was amazing with the audience. People are on the edge of the seats. You could feel it. You could feel the tension in the atmosphere, and you could just feel like everyone just like sort of like, oh God. And like when you hear things sometimes in cinemas like that might annoy you, like people like, talking, maybe answering the phone, maybe being too loud when they're eating their snacks or whatever. And that might annoy you, but sometimes there's good sounds from audiences in the cinema, like the sound of people being truly affected by a film. One of my favorite, I talk about this a lot on the Prince Charles podcast, the Pod Charles Cinecast, about one of my favorite experiences in the cinema was watching Alien and Aliens double feature. And during Alien, I think it might have been the chest burster scene, someone just screamed. Like a woman just screamed, and it was like, it gave me chills, because it was just like, yes, that's the power of cinema. Like someone, like a genuine scream. It's not like going to see like a a new horror film today and you have like goofy kids in the audience just kind of like screaming every 2 seconds, and it's just like, why are you screaming? There's nothing to scream at, sort of thing. Like there's like, it was like a genuine like just shock, and it was great. And I was just like, man, that's beautiful. That's like that really works, like that's a sign of a classic film and a good experience for people, like, at the cinema.
Yeah, I mean, that's strange. I mean, I went to see Alien there maybe 10 years ago, and I think it was like a Wednesday afternoon. Must have been 10, 11 years ago. And you kind of think, I mean, I've seen Alien is one of my favourite films, and you kind of think, like, imagine being there with someone who you'd hope it had been their first time or something like that, and being there. And I mean, I remember one time, and again about 10 years ago, when we used to go quite a lot, and there was a double bill of Lethal Weapon and Die Hard.
Yeah.
And towards the end of Die Hard, it was like being at a football match. And I think luckily, because it's, hopefully at Die Hard, most of the people had seen the film, so it wasn't necessarily spoiling it, but it was actually enhancing it in the fact that people were cheering, terrorists being shot, or certain lines and things like that. It was, really
absolutely
enhanced it in that case.
Yeah. Like that's what I'm trying to say. That sometimes there's good sounds, and like I don't want to sound like I'm sort of like a elitist that wants a quiet room when I'm watching my film, but because like sometimes you want a quiet room when you're watching a certain film. Like you don't want to hear people talking through 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like those films like that you get lost into, and like you just like you should have like a degree of silence around you and stuff to just get tripped out by what you're seeing before your eyes. But like when you're like watching Die Hard, that's the beautiful thing about the Prince Charles Cinema. Like, obviously we're known for being the place for the room, but it's not just that has that cult vibe to it. Like these films like Die Hard and stuff, I had the exact same experience as you, but just not this past Christmas, but the year before, we showed it on 70 millimeter, and the room was lit, man. People were like really hyped up. Like it was really good to see and really good to hear, like people cheering, like for Alan Rickman, his first appearance, like just really excited to see him, and like the whole like all the notes, all the lines, all the big pops, all the like thrills, chills, and of that film. And like people were just like on board for it and going along with it. It was great, really fun.
Well, I mean, I've mentioned several times about having seen some of the films I've done either there or having been there on various occasions, and I know some of the guys who've guested on here, and I know listen, we've often been there and gone for a couple of beers afterwards, and I suppose the dream will always be to have a Betamax Video Club Presents night there, but maybe on another, when things get back to normal and we can find that film, maybe it'll be better off dead. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? That'd be great.
And now something else we touched upon briefly, the podcast that you do for the cinema. What can people expect from there? I mean, I've listened to several episodes, but how does it link to what you do at the cinema, and what do you talk about?
Yeah, well, originally the sort of idea was like we were sort of at the cinema, and we were showcasing everyone who worked there and stuff. So it was a sort of hybrid idea. Like I was trying to find ways to like make something different, like a different voice of the cinema. Like we were sort of being tasked with some of the managers and owners of the cinema to like find a voice for the cinema, a different voice. And I was just like thinking of like ways to do that via our marketing. And I was just like, man, like a podcast would be great. What if we like had a podcast where we're talking about like our love for this place and the program and the things that are shown here, but also the people like who run the place. Like it's one of the things that we hear most from people in emails and stuff, or reviews on Google or wherever it is, like TripAdvisor or whatever, like about how much they like the staff, and like I want to tell their stories. And that's sort of like my vibe, is trying to help people. I've always been like that. I play music and stuff, and I've always like tried to help people out in those sort of things, even if I can't possibly help people because I don't really know how, or I don't have the contacts or whatever it is. I still always just want to try to push people's stories, and it's like really interesting. And there's a lot of cool people at the cinema. When I first went to the cinema as a patron, just like walking in the door, I was just like, oh, these people like seem really cool. And then I started working there, and it was just really weird to be like flipped, and you're one of those people, and like in the meet and hang around with all of those like crazy people, and like all doing like really cool, unique things, writers, musicians, filmmakers, actors, dancers, whatever, there's a eclectic crew there, and I want to tell those stories, and that was sort of the vibe. But of course, with things happening, the pandemic and stuff, like it sort of got harder and harder. Like I'm sure you must know, like dealing with this podcast, and you largely are probably doing it right now with people just via Skype or whatever. It's hard to like meet with people properly and make sure that they have everything they need technologically to like make the podcast sound good. So it's largely just been kind of me and Phil, my co-host right now, like just losing our minds and just like trying to take the podcast to a new level, like talk about films in the weirdest way possible. Like recently our thing has been kind of like not just talking about the film, but like just becoming the film, like almost like radio play style. We've done a few now where we're just kind of like, we're in there. Like we did like Bill and Ted, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Die Hard, and most recently It's a Wonderful Life, where we are kind of just in depth in the film. Like there's stuff going around us in those episodes where we get really creative and it's silly, and just like we're in those films while talking about the films. And that's kind of like a vibe I want to try to push forward. So it's been fun.
Excellent. Well, as I say, I'll get plenty of links in the show notes to that, and I'm sure, again, without dating this horribly, when things get back to normal, we'll try and get together and see if we can make something happen with those 80s films. I'll come along and make it a Betamax evening or something like that. But
yeah, absolutely.
Lovely.
It'd be really fun.
Yeah. Jonathan, thank you very much for coming along and bringing this copy of Better Off Dead. Now, as is the tradition, we normally play the number one song when the film came out in the UK. Now, the film didn't get a cinema release when it came in the UK, and when it did come out in the US, the number one song was The Power of Love by Jennifer Rush. But I did kind of think, while we were talking, that maybe we should have something from the film. And maybe it might be nice to play out, because we don't get a lot of this artist on here. Maybe we'll get Everybody Wants Some by Van Halen.
Yeah.
Johnny.
4 weeks. 20 papers, that's $2 plus tip.
Gee, Johnny, I don't have a dime. Sorry.
Didn't ask for a dime. $2.
Well, it's funny. See, my mom had to leave early to take my brother to school and my dad to work because...
$2. Cash.
This podcast is brought to you by executive producers Keith Foster, Jimmy Fletcher, Mark Drakes, Matt Cunnington, Chris Hopkins, Omar Zambon, Ian Madrell, Catherine Lowe, Mark Makin, Zoltan Vargo, Simon Smith, Wayne McNally, Darren Hodgkins, Dan Wellington, Alex Heal, Philip Rothenberger, Alan Fewings, Tom Carr, James Kennedy, Simon Pegg, Joe Harrison, Anita Singh, Jason Clarkson and Doug Grant, and associate producer Chris Oakley. Visit patreon.com/Betamax Video Club for more information around bonus episodes, early access, discounted merchandise and more. Bloody hell, this is taking forever these days.